I'm going to ask that we go ahead and start our meeting. And can we start first to, just because it's a Zoom call, we can't see each other. Can we do a roll call real quick? And then I want to go over the agenda. So just a roll call, please.
Okay.
Deanna, if you want to call the members in order.
Yes, I'm sorry. You have to give me just 1 second. Sorry.
And while Deanna is getting ready, I do believe, do we have Chair Linda Penner on today?
Yeah, hi, how are you?
Hi, Linda, good to talk to you, you know.
I know, it's good to see you even from afar.
Yeah, we're glad that you're able to join us today.
I'm gonna mute because I got noise over here.
Okay.
Okay, we're ready for roll call.
Thank you.
Okay. Rachel Rios.
Here.
Carol Biondi.
Here.
Brian Beck.
Here.
BJ Davis.
Here.
Carly Dirkheisen.
Here.
Juan Gomez. Michelle Guyman.
Here.
Susan Harbert.
Here.
Gordon Jackson.
Here.
Kent Mendoza.
I see him.
Oh, okay. If you see him, I'll take it. Elliot Hausman Turabiat.
Here.
Amika Mota.
Here.
Winston Peters. Dante Williams.
Here.
Amanda Clifford.
Here.
Nancy O'Malley.
Here.
Raymond Leha.
Here.
Vanessa Nahar. Chief Michelle Scray Brown.
Here.
Miguel Garcia.
Here.
That concludes roll call.
Okay, do we also want to have staff identify themselves?
We can.
I'll start. This is Tim Elsick. I'm the field representative with the Board of State and Community Corrections. And I'm co-hosting with Chair Rios today. And we can go around the room. Deanna, I think you're next.
Okay. Deanna Bennett Ridgeway, analyst with CPGP.
And BSCC Chair Penner.
On Winston Peters.
Here, I'm sorry. Hi, Winston. Linda's here.
Okay.
And Tim, this is Katie Howard. I think I can introduce the rest of the BSCC staff because I know it's hard to know whose turn it is. This is Katie Howard speaking. Good morning, everybody. Very happy to see you. Hi, all. It's really nice to see you on the screen at this difficult moment. I'm Katie Howard, the Executive Director, and I know that Ricardo Goodrich, our Division Director, is on the line, as is Aaron McGuire. And I think that's all of the, oh no, sorry, excuse me. Allison Ganter is also on the line, as is Eloisa, Eloisa Tuitama, who's making a presentation today. Juanita Renaga is on the line, and Katrina Jackson, one of our new field representatives, is with us, as are a few other staff. I'm just going to tell you who's here from our team. Helene Zentner, also from CPGP, Ginger Wolf, who's in our inspections division, and Melinda Gillies from CPGP as well. Now did I get all the BSCC staff? If not, please jump on and say your name.
Rosa Pargas. Rosa Pargas. Go ahead, Tanya.
I was just saying I was here, Phil Rep, CPGP.
And Rosa Pargas, CPGP as well.
Great. Well, thank you, everyone. I'm not sure if we have any members of the public. Do we have any members of the public today? Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. You know, I do want to just quickly maybe kind of outline some housekeeping issues and then kind of go over our agenda. But we do have some speakers first thing this morning from the governor's office per the SACJob's request. So many of you have been doing these Zoom calls for the last couple of months, and you understand a lot of the protocols that are involved. It is very difficult, especially when you have a large group and you can't see when someone wants to make a comment. So I would encourage you to use the chat box if you'd like to speak. And I've asked the staff, Tim and Deanna, to be monitoring that so that they'll let us know that who's next, so that we're able to hear everyone's questions and be able to communicate in that way. Also, during part of the presentation, because we do want to be able to have the presenters give us the information, we will probably mute everyone just in case someone forgets to mute. We will mute everyone and then open it back up again so that we can have that open dialogue in that conversation. Tim, is there anything else that I needed, housekeeping things that I needed to cover? We'll talk about some other things towards the end of our meeting. I did want to bring up some issues regarding like the Form 700 and so forth, but we'll do those business items at the end. For the most part, this morning, we do have two presentations. As you know, the SACJOB wanted to hear from the governor's office the recent information about the status of the Division of Juvenile Justice and what that means for our communities, of course. And then we also are required to, finalize the compliance monitoring annual legislative report. And those of you that were in that meeting in Los Angeles last year, we had a great presentation by Eloisa. She's going to do a overall presentation for us again, and for the new members, this will be a good opportunity to understand one of our big requirements, which is these core compliance issues. So anything else, Tim?
Yeah, two things. The first being that I want to make sure everybody's aware that this meeting is being recorded. So the recording has actually already been started. And then also I want to make sure that for those who did not receive my email or are not able to access my email at this time that had the documents attached, and also any public members who would need to access documents. Normally we have binders available at the meeting for public and staff. However, this time we followed the BSCC's lead on the way they have been hosting Zoom meetings, and all of our documents are on the BSCC website. Under the meetings link, there's a June 4th SACJOB meeting listed with the agenda posted, and all of the documents that we'll be referencing today are actually uploaded and available now on the website. I want to thank our IT staff for assisting me in making that happen, but they are there. So if you do need to access any of this information both now and later, the documents are available.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tim. And so this meeting, we are happy to have Chair Linda Penner joining us. And Linda, I know we're going to have the BSCC updates later in the agenda, but just wanted to give you a moment if you wanted to say some kind of introductory comments.
Well, my apologies. I'm having technology issues. I'm trying to get from my iPad to my work computer, and it's not going that well. But no, I'm super happy to be here today. Interesting times as we look at this DJJ effort, and I'm so happy that they're taking time from the governor's office to come in and do the briefing today. I appreciate everybody's hard work. I don't want to hold up the meeting any further, so we'll let them get going.
Okay. And the last thing before we turn it over to the governor's office is, as members have brought forward, I wanted to make sure that the committee knew that we did want to have conversation on, current events, on what's going on in our communities, what's with COVID, as well as the current situations that are going on right now in our community. That really speak to the work that's before us. So I did want to make sure that folks knew that we do have a plan to have that conversation. So with that, I believe that we have Jessica DeVancy, I hope I pronounced that right, from the governor's office, who's going to make the presentation on the status of the Division of Juvenile Justice. And would like to turn it over to you, Jessica. And then at this time, all of our devices will be muted so that she can make her presentation.
And Chair Rios, this is Katie. Before we jump over to Jessica, I'm not sure if Eloisa is at her computer, but I'm hoping, Eloisa, that you can hear me. And please stop the screen share, because then that way people can see more tiles of the video. Thank you.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Oh,
Yay.
thank you so much. Fantastic.
Right.
That's better. Okay, to you, Jessica.
Perfect, thank you. Good morning, Jessica DeVincenzi. I handle criminal justice legislation for the governor's office and have been
I believe she's muted.
You muted yourself.
I muted myself.
No, I think we did that, sorry.
So I'll start over. So good morning, Jessica DeVincenzi from the governor's office. So a bit of an odd time to be talking about this proposal, given that we're currently negotiating it with both houses, the Assembly and the Senate. Not sure where we'll land yet. We have about another week or so to get to a good landing place. But as we envisioned it, I'm just going to talk about how we envisioned it in the May revise. So we did propose in the May revise to close DJJ. We're proposing to close intake as of January 1st of next year, and then to close DJJ through attrition. The May revise proposal also envisioned counties bringing up treatment centers to house youth who need specialized treatment and funding to go with the to fund that. Additionally, in the May revise, we envisioned the funding for those treatment centers, kind of hubs, as folks have been calling them, to flow through the BSCC. Like I said in the beginning, we're negotiating all of this. At this point, it's looking like it will likely be a bifurcated effort where we settle on some items as of June 15th and then push additional items out for further conversation into the summer for incorporation into the budget either in August or next year. And in doing that, it is likely that we'll be pushing off the implementation date. So we won't be closing on January 1st, but some later date intake. So that's kind of a high level overview of what we're doing and where we are. And we felt like this was the right time to do it. We felt like it was good policy and so kind of seize the moment. So I'm happy to hear any comments. I know we've been hearing from a number of advocacy groups, a number of governmental agencies. All of the feedback has been phenomenal. I think we're going to be incorporating a good amount of it, but would be interested to hear what thoughts you guys have.
Great. I think that we can unmute staff if they're, our members, if they're still muted. And then can we, if you could put in your chat, because I'm sure a lot of folks have questions, maybe we'll go ahead and start, and then through the chat, if you'll indicate that you would have a question, that way Tim can call on folks based on the order. So I see that Amanda has a question, so we'll start with Amanda.
Hi, thank you so much, Jessica. Can you talk a little bit more about treatment centers and kind of how you envision those operating, services, etc.?
So the way we originally envisioned it was basically a county would apply for funding and we would give some supplemental funding to what counties will likely be getting, and they would bring up these treatment hubs that would provide treatment for sex offenders and youth who need a higher level of mental health care. That said, those hubs are kind of on the table right now. So we aren't sure that that will be something that goes forward at this point. So that's kind of what I mentioned at the beginning. Everything is really up in the air right now. But that is how we initially envisioned it, to provide that higher level of care.
Thank you. I think Juan had a question next.
Yeah, and I'm also thinking, it's a two-part question going back to the individual that spoke before me. Like, who is defining what a hub is, right? Along with who would run, quote unquote, the hub, and is the money all going to the county / probation? And if that decision was made, why is that? And shouldn't we be thinking about the community and building out also alternatives? Because it can't be just a treatment center ran by probation, because essentially the role of the BSCC becomes weird, right? Because now we have to rethink what BSCC composition looks like, because we have to be now thinking about community needs, not institutional DJJ practices. And I know there's a lot of law enforcement or law enforcement related folks on the, on not just, yeah.
So
right?
no, sorry. So initially, like I said, we did envision the treatment center being run by probation, and there would be some level of, lack of a better word, oversight by BSCC as they were pushing the money out. But like I said, that is really up in the air at this point.
I think Carol had her hand up.
Yeah, I tried to chat, but it wasn't taking. I hit chat and then started to type, but I could see it wasn't typing, so I'll have to learn that that piece of it. My question is, you've stopped intake, but that stopped some months ago. We have 20 youth in our halls right now that have been waiting for many, many months, whenever that was. So essentially, that is going to continue. Our courts will presumably continue to do that. Is there going to be acknowledgement of that by the state so that those youth will be provided with some plan in these hearings? We do have obviously camp availability, and there are youth, our camps are, the numbers in our camps are going up, but those youth are just staying in the halls with no plans. And presumably those numbers that continue to be, you know, a designated DJJ youth will have no treatment plan at all. So how is that going to be dealt with?
So my understanding is that we will be reopening intake and those youth will be transferred to DJJ. I'm not sure what the time frame is on that, but I can follow up with you on that.
So that means DJJ will be open for as long as 2+ years, because I think, isn't that a minimum
Yes.
sentence is 24 months or something is a minimum, and
Yes.
it's going to be longer than that. So we're looking at DJJ being open for as long as, how long?
As long as needed to basically ensure, basically it'll be done through attrition. So once the number of youth is completely down, then we'll close. Does that make sense?
5 years? It could be 5 years?
It could be longer. Yes, there's no date at this point.
But it could be at least 5 years.
I don't know. I don't know how long it will take yet.
I have some follow-ups, but let me let the members go. I think Elliot was next, and then Judge Back.
Hi, Jessica. This is Elliot, Houseman Tubiate from Sacramento Native Health. I know a lot of things are up in the air, and you might not have these answers, but in an ideal world, right, with the proposals you're suggesting, what would it look like on the ground for like a youth or a family, right? So like, let's say a youth commits some kind of offense, right? Can you take me through the process that youth would go through from that offense to getting treatment to, you know, can you take me through that in an ideal world if the new proposals are accepted?
So I think in an ideal world that the youth would be kept closer to home, so in a county or a neighboring county, and the to the extent a youth needs a higher level of care, kind of going back to the hub idea or the bed idea, wherever we land, that the youth would with the youth to ensure that they're in the right spot. So whether it be in one of those beds or in a regular facility or in the community. So we're really, the picture is that probation will work with the youth to move them through and to get them back out into the community as soon as possible.
And I just, before we go to Judge Back, I just realized that, you know, I neglected to have you introduce yourself so that Jessica would know where you work at and where your, you know, your questions or perspective is. I want to continue with the questions, but can we just quickly, and this is not a bio, this is just give your name and where you work at so that she has an idea of all these wonderful questions that are coming forward, where they're coming from, because you have experience in the juvenile justice from different perspectives. So can we, I'm not sure how we're going to go about doing this. Can staff do roll call and give names so that we can just have an order of how we go ahead doing this?
That's a great idea, Rachel.
Deanna, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
Yeah, Deanna, if you wouldn't mind, since you have the attendance roster of who's here, if you would call out the, I think we had 17 in attendance, by the way, we do have a quorum. Deanna, if you wouldn't mind naming off an order and allowing individuals to unmute themselves.
No problem. Chair Rachel Rios, we'll start with you.
Okay, I'm Rachel Rios. I'm the Executive Director of La Familia Counseling Center, which is a nonprofit here in Sacramento, and I was previously the Director of the Division of Juvenile Justice.
Carol Biondi, Vice Chair of SACJ. I'm also on the LA County Commissioner for Children and Families for 20 years. And I'm also on the board of the Children's Defense Fund for 25 years, Anti-Recidivism Coalition, and others.
Carol Biondi is our Vice Chair. Let's start with Honorable Brian Beck.
Hi, I'm a retired judge from Ventura County. Half of my time, more than half of my time is spent in the juvenile justice system, in the juvenile delinquency court. I've been on SACJ for about, I guess, 8-9 years. And I stay involved as an assigned judge covering both criminal and juvenile matters.
Dr. BJ Davis.
You're on mute, BJ. BJ, you're muted.
Okay. BJ Davis, Executive Director, Strategies for Change, nonprofit substance abuse and co-occurring mental health treatment facility here in Sacramento. Also the Senior Manager in charge of training and clinical quality for WellSpace Health, which is one of the largest healthcare providers here in Sacramento, and have about a 15-year history of working with criminal justice reentry for both adults and youth.
Dr. Carly Durkheisen.
Carly Durkheisen. I'm a psychologist and a professor in the School of Criminal Justice and Criminalistics at Cal State LA.
Juan Gomez.
Yeah, buenos dias, good morning. Juan Gomez, Executive Director at MIPA. We're a grassroots organizing an advocacy-based building collective. I'm also formerly incarcerated as a ward at DJJ. Old CYA, thank you. Laura.
Michelle Guyman.
Hi, Michelle Guyman with Los Angeles County Probation Department, and I'm the director of our child trafficking unit.
Susan Harbert.
Hi, I'm a staff attorney at the Center for Juvenile Law and Policy at Loyola Law School in Los Angeles. And we have a juvenile justice clinic as well as a juvenile innocence and fair sentencing clinic.
Gordon Jackson.
Good morning. Retired State Administrator for the California Department of Education and currently the National Director of Three Strands Global Foundation, a nonprofit focusing on anti-human trafficking efforts.
Kent Mendoza.
Good afternoon. Good morning, everybody. Kent Mendoza, Policy Manager at the Anti-Recidivism Coalition in Los Angeles, member of the Juvenile Justice Coordinated Council, also member of the Youth Justice Work Group in LA County that is actually already answering some of these questions around the transition of DJJ into the county and the development of a youth development department and, you know, the legal process, how that should be looked at now and, you know, all of that. So we're kind of already tackling these questions in the local level in my county, and I'm glad to be part of this. And I'm formerly incarcerated too. Spent 5 years in DJJ.
Thank you. Elliot Hausman Tarubiat.
Elliot Hausman Trubiate. I'm a youth advocate, Sacramento Native Health, work specifically with Native youth in Sacramento County.
My apologies, Elliot. Amika Mota.
Hey, good morning all. Amika Mota. I am the statewide policy director at the Young Women's Freedom Center. We are a leadership and advocacy organization for women, girls, and transgender nonconforming folks. About 90% plus of our staff is formerly incarcerated. I'm also formerly incarcerated.
Winston Peters.
Hi, I'm Winston Peters, Assistant Public Defender over North Branch and area operations. It includes both adult and juvenile operations.
Dante Williams.
Dante Williams, a working youth development at City of Refuge in Sacramento, formerly youth advocate manager for Stanford Youth Solutions, probation chaplain and a minister, and a student.
Amanda
formerly incarcerated, sorry.
Sorry, Dante, thank you. Amanda Clifford.
Hi, I work at Bill Wilson Center, which serves homeless youth and families as the policy and advocacy associate and formerly justice involved.
Nancy O'Malley.
I'm the district attorney of Alameda County, and I also have a nonprofit research institute called the HEAT Institute, which is Human Exploitation and Trafficking, with a focus on dealing with trafficked youth, commercially, sexually trafficked youth.
Ramon Leja.
Good morning, everyone. Ramon Leja. I work with the Office of Governor Gavin Newsom within the Constituent Affairs Unit. I'm also formerly incarcerated, and I've been with the SACJ since 2016. Thank you.
By chance, did Vanessa Nahar come in? Okay. Chief Michelle Scray Brown.
Sorry. Hi, Michelle Scray Brown. I'm the chief of probation in San Bernardino County, and one of the downfalls of doing Zoom meetings from your office is you're in your office. So if I click out momentarily, it's because I'm getting interrupted. So apologies.
Thank you. Miguel Garcia.
Good morning. My name is Miguel Garcia. I'm the policy coordinator for the Anti-Recidivism Coalition Sacramento office, also formerly incarcerated DJJ from Riverside County.
That concludes our membership.
Thank you so much, and I apologize for not doing that earlier. I think next that had a question was Judge Beck.
Yeah, the question, actually put it in the chat box, was these hubs that you're talking about, are they county by county things, or are they regional offices? What exactly are they, or what's contemplated?
So we had originally contemplated them being regional, so maybe 3 to 6 throughout the state of California. Like I mentioned, they are on the table. There has been some discussion about, rather than doing these larger hubs, that we have just beds in counties, and counties can work together to use kind of each other's beds and each other's programming. But that's something that's currently under discussion.
So are they secure hubs? I mean, are they another name for DJJ?
That was part of the concern, which is why we're looking towards doing something that are more just beds in the juvenile halls that are able to provide more treatment.
And in deciding on the regional hubs, was that also contemplated that it would be difficult to maybe create 58 different hubs in 58 different counties? Is that the thinking?
That was one of the thinking. We know that there is really specialized treatment at DJJ, especially the sex offender treatment program. So when we first envisioned it, we were concerned that not all counties would be able to provide that level of care. since then, we've been hearing from a lot of folks that they are, and that they're willing to do it on a county level. So that's kind of why we've moved away from that a bit. Like I said, though, I don't know where we're going to land on it yet.
All right, thank you.
I'm just going through the chat thing, and I'm sorry, Nancy, it looks like I missed your name there, but I think you were up there before. So can we go to Nancy and then Miguel?
Thank you. So you just hit a little bit on what I was interested in. At the juvenile halls, they're not as equipped to deal with longer term care, the more intensive care. So that's something I'm assuming that you're looking at as you're figuring out what the next plan will be. But the other thing is there a concern that some individuals, some youth will be living in the same facility with younger youth for a short term, and some of the safety concerns or anything like that?
So yes, there have been some discussions about that. As far as, so starting with the first question about how we're contemplating bringing up programming on the local level, I know we are talking about funding so that counties can bring up those programs. One of the things we're currently contemplating, even if we move away from the hubs, is some startup funding to get these programs up and running. I don't know where we'll land on physical plant at this point. I know there have been some concerns raised by counties that they do need some changes to their halls to house longer term youth, but that's still being discussed as well. Sorry, I wish I had very concrete answers to all of the questions. It's just, we're, like I said, in the middle of all of the negotiations. And some of these negotiations are going to trail out over the summer.
Thank you. I think we have Miguel next and Dr. BJ following that.
Sorry to throw another question to you. I think we're the thought process of like limiting the court's options, like also considered and seeing how because the jurisdiction to keep a youth for a period of time is so short in counties and it varies. And then I know the governor talked about the Valley State Prison as being for a hub for transitional age youth. Is there anything being currently looked at where counties have an extension of youth jurisdiction that's the same thing that DJJ has, but also doesn't limit the court's options as well as addressing youth treatment and development?
And I'm not sure I'm fully, let me answer, and if it's not the answer, please let me know. We are looking at raising the age of jurisdiction in the juvenile halls to be consistent with DJJ's age of jurisdiction for youth that are adjudicated through the juvenile court. As far as youth who are adjudicated or who go through the adult side, that population is a population that we're still talking about and trying to figure out how that will all work. So I'm not sure if that answers the question, but that's what we're looking at.
Yes.
Okay, I think Dr. BJ? Dr. BJ, did you have, oh, go ahead,
you're
sorry.
Muted.
Man, this mute thing. Okay. My question is kind of similar to Juan's, and so my question is when they have the hubs, who's being consulting on how those things are going to be created, and what's going to be the quality control mechanism? Because my concern is that if it's treatment focused, my experience with treatment that is probation driven is that the oversight of it is just not very good. They're not equipped to actually be able to provide quality control on what is good versus what is not effective treatment. And so I'm concerned about how the treatment's going to be, what's going to drive the treatment, and what's going to be the oversight that the youth are actually getting evidence-based informed treatment, because that's been my concern, even with the adult day reporting centers and the treatment that's being provided there, because typically it's just given to the person that writes the best RFP, which is not necessarily the results in what I would call effective application of treatment.
So going back, we don't know if we're doing the hubs yet. So we did envision the money moving through BSEC, so some standards being set through BSEC as that money goes out. So that's kind of the answer of kind of what we were thinking, and that some of the treatment parameters would be outlined through like an RFP process or a grant process. Now that we're talking about doing this more kind of beds within counties, I think oversight is something that we need to look at. It's something that I know the legislature is advocating for, as well as a number of advocacy groups. I think that'll be a conversation that we'll have over the summer. So that hasn't been settled yet.
Well, I'd like to be consulted.
Okay.
Just for the record.
Perfect.
Okay. Ken?
I put your name down, so now you will be consulted.
Yeah, I forgot what my question was gonna be, but I feel like I have a lot. I know that in LA County, the Board of Supervisors had already voted on a motion to basically explore the kind of moving out of the probation department into one of the youth development and care. And, you know, that discussion has been going on since January, February already. You know, we divide into 3 subcommittees. The first one is around youth development and diversion. The second one is around the legal process, and the third one is around alternatives to incarceration. And that's where the DJJ piece will fall on. And some of the things around the hubs have already come up in our subcommittees, in our discussions. And so what I wanted to ask, like, how can we, I feel like LA County is a little bit ahead on that discussion already. And I would like to see how can we ensure that other counties can already have something like that, like a team that has been known for working with the community and can start implementing this, because the only people that can do this is people like us. And I think that a lot of community-based organizations can already start taking some of this youth, because, you know, when I look at ARC and our housing, you know, or when we go to retreats, you know, there's a time when I remember one of my youth who just had gotten release of DJJ, went to any retreat, he came up to me like, hey, Ken, I've been thinking in the right and I have something I shouldn't have in this retreat. There could have been 2 things I could have done. Or an organization like us we could call the police, hey, he just violated, he brought something he shouldn't bring it to this. That could have been easy pat them. Then that would have gone back to DJ, whatever, right? But no, what did we do? We diverted him right there at the moment. I did, because I'm someone like him. Like, hey, you know what? Give me that thing. Let's talk about it. Don't do this. This is how you burn bridges. Bam, he got it. He understands it. Now he's doing better. So it's like, there's already community-based organizations that are doing what probation and DJ could probably do, they were doing, right? We can divert our own people. We can provide some of these things. So I would like to figure out how can we create, how can the state support something like that, where we could have that implemented in the counties that they have and really start digging into the questions around how exactly you're going to implement this, because at the end of the day, it's all, the questions are going to land on, like, the questions that are going to come up is always going to be administrative and operations. Those are the questions. You're like, where's it going to live at? And, you know, who's going to work in it and stuff like that. So I would love to see, I don't know what you guys are thinking about making sure that there's real implementation in it, and that is the right people that are doing it, not just people from outside the county or the community. Yeah, but I forgot my original, that was not my original question. I had an original question, but I got it lost throughout the conversation.
All right. Jessica, I didn't know if you wanted to reply to that or.
No, I was going to say thank you. I think that your thoughts are really welcome. And yeah, that's all I was going to say.
Okay. We did have a question from someone with E22, but we don't know who they are. Is E22?
That's
8103.
Winston, I think that's Winston.
Is that you,
Yeah,
Winston?
that's right. Yeah.
All right, Winston, and then Ramon.
I know that you don't have a lot of answers right now. It sounds like this whole concept is in its formative stage, but I just wanted to make some requests, which is that these treatment hubs, and especially since it's going to be at the local level, and apparently it's going to be under probation, I think. I'm just hoping that there's a new vision for these hubs, that it's not just another part of the probation institution, that there's a new vision in terms of what treatment is going to be about. That, for example, the staff to kids ratio, that it's a rich one, it's a higher ratio, so that there's a lot of treatment, there's a lot of social workers and therapists and that sort of stuff, so that it's rich. It's a different paradigm, a different model than what we've traditionally seen in juvenile halls and camps. And it really focuses on treatment, and that the staff there are really trained to deal with a lot of the issues that kids deal with. That it's culturally sensitive, that people are trained on de-escalation techniques. They understand, brain development. They can deal with youth. I mean, it should be. I'm hoping that it's a very different paradigm, and it's not more of the same. So I'm hoping that whoever's putting this together has a very different vision of what you're trying to do here, and of course that it's evidence-based, as someone before said. So I know you don't have very much specifics, but I hope that this model is infused with a lot of these values and with this vision, and then that it really makes a difference and is not more of the same. So that's my observation.
Thank you, Winston. I think we had Ramon next.
Yes. Hi. Just quick question. I know that many things are still being discussed and up in the air, and so they're really, well, you might have started with it, but I didn't catch it. I was trying to connect. I wanted to know if you can re-clarify or reiterate what is concrete right now. What can we expect at this time in regards to the direction for DJJ? I know that a lot of things are being discussed, as you mentioned, proposed, but is there anything that's set that, yes, this is what we're going, this is at least what we're going to do? And if there isn't, is there a time frame when we can expect something like that?
So I think that, no, nothing is concrete. So everything is still being negotiated in the budget. As far as timing, it'll be concrete. We'll have some concrete answers once the budget's passed. So probably June 15th, roughly. We'll have some good answers. But as of now, nothing's concrete. The date will likely be moved out. The hubs will likely be changed. We need to add age of jurisdiction and parameters. We're talking about just a variety of different things. So nothing is concrete at this point.
Thank you.
Sorry, I know this was a really weird time to come talk to you guys right before. Had it been 2 weeks later, I would have had a lot of concrete, good information.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I work in the governor's office too, and a lot of things are still being discussed and don't have enough answers for everyone. So I was hoping there was something there, but I understand. So thank you.
And maybe this is a good time to come, because maybe before there are concrete decisions, having the ability to hear some of these suggestions and hear from community members that have worked in the system, that have been in the system, and that work with people in the system, I think is really important before decisions are made. Before we go to the round, I think some folks have some follow-up questions. I did want to just, ask some questions or maybe just ask of the folks that are making this, is to be inclusive. I think Dr. BJ talked about hearing from the voices. I will say that from my experience when I was leading DJJ and there was a realignment, a lot of times there wasn't conversations with people who could actually have helped inform the process. Very well intentions to move young people from a state system to a local system ended up creating more young people being sent to adult prison. And that was the opposite effect of what we wanted to have happen, right? And so part of this is, you know, if you have these hubs, like what's the criteria to get in? What if they're full? And if they're privately run, who can they say no? So then does that mean that if I'm a young person, I don't have the opportunity to go to a treatment center, instead I go where? And so having those conversations with people who've gone through this is really critical. And I think this body has a lot of really good information and some suggestions, and making sure that those voices are inclusive of the communities, because the impact to communities of colors we know is going to be significant. And so just making sure that we hear all voices in the process of that, especially if these are going to be county run. We know that California is so diverse, but the demographics from one county to another are significantly different sometimes. And so making sure that we're really meeting the needs of those communities. And if these are going to be hubs for the state, how does that look? And how do we include everyone in that? With that, I know that we have a couple more folks that wanted to make some comments to come back around. Miguel, Amanda, and then Frankie Guzman. Is Frankie a member of the public?
Yes, I hope so.
Yes, he is.
Okay, great. So let's go with our members first. Miguel and Amanda had some follow-up questions, and then Frankie.
Yes, I just want to echo Madam Rios's comments. And you know, this body is comprised of, you know, experience that a lot of us wish not to want to tell or remember, but we sit here and want to offer our experience to better guide what California can be and helping shape, you know, all that in treatment. I want to start off as, like, prior to leaving me DJJ, I was part of the remodeling of the Ventura Youth Correctional Facility as a team leader. Making the wall was known as the wall hardening project, which made the institution feel like more still, like more like a cage. And I remember those were projects followed by what were the projects that made me look up and say, look, I was creating 2 BTP programs that were like iron cages. Our counties are ready to, you know, go to that, and are they asking funds to, you know, put paint over walls, harden the walls, so that they could attempt to address these youth that have committed serious harms. I think it's important that, you know, voices of impacted from everyone from the juvenile justice system be involved in conversations. I know the governor had already comprised a committee to oversee the transition from CDCR to public health. I, as well as I believe some others that were on here, were part of that committee, and that human health lens should not be forgotten, but also still be highly considered due to the COVID-19 crisis and the light that it has shined on the racial and ethnic disparities that California has. So I just want to say, the governor should feel confident in having this body, as well, for suggestions, as well as considering another body to oversee this major youth transition, because the past 10 years we have come a long way from addressing on how we better serve our youth, and I feel that this is an opportunity to do it even better if done right. And thank you.
Thank you. I think we had Amanda next, and then we have a member of the public.
Hi, I just had another thought, and Rachel already kind of touched on this. During the negotiations, has there been any discussion about how these youth or how these decisions will be impacting youth charged as an adult? I think one of my fears is that if the county's judges or DAs don't feel comfortable that there is a good alternative, that there could be an increase of young people being charged as an adults. So I was just wondering if you had any thoughts or comments on that.
No, that has been the number one thing that we want to avoid. We don't want more youth to end up in the adult system. So some of the things we're talking about to help kind of mitigate that risk, raising the age of jurisdiction locally, pushing out the time frame so we can get good programs up so judges are comfortable putting youth in that program or in those programs. We're also talking about allowing a very limited number of youth to continue to be sent to DJJ while it remains open, so not completely closing it, kind of a much smaller group still going in. And then finally, we've been talking about perhaps creating a special kind of a dispositional track for these youth, for a very limited number of youth. So those are the items that we're currently talking about. Definitely want to mitigate that risk as much as possible. It's a major concern for us.
And may I just offer one more suggestion, is that in some of my youth spaces, one of our sayings is those closest to the problem are often closest to the solution. So I would just offer a suggestion of maybe talking to the DJJ youth about what some good programming might be for them or other young people with justice involved experience. And I'm happy to offer myself as one of those.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to, we have a lot, we could talk about this for a long time, but we do have another big agenda. I would like to offer the member of the public, Mr. Guzman, had a question. I think you're muted right now, Mr. Guzman. There you go.
Okay, thank you. So my name is Frankie Guzman. Hi, Jessica. Good to meet you by video. I'm an attorney at the National Center for Youth Law, where I've worked to reduce transfers of juveniles to the adult system, to shrink the juvenile incarceration system statewide, and to increase community capacity to serve youth in their communities in a health-based way that is proven more effective than punishment. I'm also a formerly incarcerated youth. I spent 6 years in the California Youth Authority and DJJ. And so, I just want to say at the outset, I recognize that this plan to shut down DJJ is a result of very sudden and unexpected turn of events, and recognize that perhaps the plan wasn't very well thought through before announcing, as evidenced by the rethinking of pretty much the entire plan. But I am still concerned, just a lot of the comments that are being made, I feel like there's still very little talk about oversight and accountability. I don't think it's enough to be monitored by the BSCC, but there really has to be a way to ensure that when we give all authority and power to probation and essentially create a monopoly that is the juvenile justice system in one entity, that we do things to protect young people from abuse, as we've experienced throughout history. There are 58 counties, 58 probation departments, many with varying degrees of effectiveness, and others that have, some we've had to sue, just to put it bluntly. This week, the governor himself admitted to giving lip service to communities of color, and those communities mostly impacted by structural racism and state violence. And my question to you, Jessica, and for the governor is, you've said you all are negotiating, and these terms, changing terms, are in negotiation. Who are you negotiating with? Is it just CPOC? Is it just law enforcement? Because I think without input from communities of color and formerly incarcerated folks, as so many people on this call have mentioned, without any investments in community resources, or without outlining or supporting any alternatives besides law enforcement driven responses, this is going to be a disaster. We're just going to have to sue 58 counties. We're going to have to, save our children once again. I recognize that this plan was probably prompted by budget more than policy, but my second question is, where is the public health focus that the governor committed to moving towards last year? So, just to round up, like, who are you negotiating with, from the communities that will be most impacted by these policies, and what happened to the public health approach that the governor committed to embarking on last year?
So a couple things. So first, with regard to negotiations, we're currently working with the legislature, given that we have to land a budget by June 15th. So that's who we've been talking to primarily. When I say negotiating, it's with them. we're talking to them about a variety of different things. I don't know if you were on in the beginning. This is likely going to be a very bifurcated process where we do just a few things up front to get the move settled, and then deal with everything else that needs to be done over the summer and throughout the year. And by pushing it out a bit will give us time to do that. So that's what I'm talking about, negotiating. It'll also give us more time for stakeholders to engage. So there's that part. I mean, with regard to the health aspect of it, I mean, I think that for decades we've heard that it's best for youth to be closer to home. And so that's what we were trying to achieve here. So I don't know,
closer to home in a prison cage doesn't really mean what we're asking for. What we're asking for is least restrictive approach as possible, focused on positive youth development with community interaction. And this plan doesn't have that. I think the identifying closer to home is kind of, in some ways, disrespectful to people who really mean this seriously. Like, our kids can no longer be taken from us and put in cages and be destroyed systematically, and then be blamed when they come out and experience or contribute to a 70% recidivism rate. We want to see more kids being, treated with community-based partnerships with public health. Mark Galley, who is a very capable person, is standing by and can help. We've been engaged in your office. We've been contributing a lot of the ideas that you've identified to improve upon your plan. I just still haven't heard from anywhere, in any conversations, that there has been any meaningful engagement with communities of color. ARC spoke, Milpa has spoken. These are formerly incarcerated folks who have a lot of expertise. And if we're, committing to no longer just giving lip service to the issues that are impacting Black and Brown communities, I think we need to really put our money where our mouth is, fund these alternatives and these resources, and not just simply abdicate our responsibility as a state to really support these young people who are in crisis, who need our support and our protection, and basically just say, here's the money, here's the bodies, don't bother us, we trust you, because I think that plan is going to fail.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Guzman. I really appreciate your comments. I do want to move us on. I think Kent said he had one short question, Kent, and then I'd like to make some closing comments and then move us. So a short question, Kent?
I don't know if it's a question or idea, but I think that based on this conversation and something that I've been thinking about and that hasn't been talked about in anywhere, it's around, like, I feel like there needs to be like some type of principles around restoration and youth development. I don't know how we could change those things around, get away from, like, what does security look like? What does that really mean now? Because I feel like we haven't talked about those things, and I think that if we could redefine what that really means, maybe that will help hopefully change, the descriptions of who really needs to be working on this. We're defining it as getting away from, like, security is supposed to be around rehabilitation, restoration, and development, and building the human person back to where it was broken. And I feel like if we could figure out ways, I don't know how the state could do it, change some terms, negotiate, but like change those terms so we can implement it. So when we do have some type of system in place at the local level, that however it is functioning is by those principles, that it's not about punishing, it's not about confinement, it's around rehabilitation, restoration, and building the youth around youth development principles and stuff like that. So I don't know if I just had an idea around that. I think that we haven't talked about how that's going to look like, because if we are going to have to in place, we need to talk about what does security look like, who's going to work in these positions, and how are they going to work on these positions. And I feel like the answer is in the community. We already are doing this in the community. So I would love to figure out how we could change that, because I think that we haven't talked about real principles, of real humane principles of that security, if we are going to have a place where we're going to have kids.
Thank you. That's a good idea.
Thank you, Kent. So overall, I think you got a lot of really good, we really appreciate you, Jessica, coming out and answering, questions to the best of the ability with the information that you have. And I think you got a lot of good suggestions. I would just say that this body here has a lot of expertise, and I think that we could be of service. I think I heard, recommendations of having more community input in the decisions as you're developing that and what that looks like. And, we have had experience pulling together community input, whether it's for our work plan. And so I offer our body, here as a resource. We are reflective of the communities we were, we represent all of the state here. And so, and individually, different members have different expertises that would be able to contribute. So to that extent, we hope that you do really get a broad sense of community input in developing this new system so that it does really meet the needs of our communities. Again, we're here to advise, to be of assistance. And we want to actually have voice in the process.
Thank you. And Katie and Linda have my contact information for any of you who don't have it. I'm sure they can provide it to you. So please reach out. I know some of you are. We've gotten letters. We've gotten recommendations, which, like I said, we have started to incorporate. So thank you.
Is there a process, and maybe the question would be, so not as just receiving feedback, but is there consideration for actually having a formal process by which community input will be received? So whether that's having community circles or whether that's, connecting with folks in different of the treatment fields that are necessary, is that something that's part of the work plan, or could you include that as part of the work plan?
Yeah, I can talk to folks about that. I'm happy to.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much again. We really appreciate you spending so much time. Did you have, Tim, is that you?
Yeah, I just want to make sure for protocol's sake that any other individuals who are on this line that are public or staff that are not all members of the SACJJDP do realize that now is the time to raise your hand if you have a public comment. And then barring none, we can move on.
So I'll just formally ask, are there any comments by members of the public?
And please use the chat feature to identify yourself. Seeing none, Madam Chair.
Seeing none, then again, thank you again. We really appreciate the conversation. We look forward to additional conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everyone. So a lot to think about there, and we can have further discussion as we go into the state plan a little bit later, but I know that we have limited time, and I did want to give Eloisa an opportunity to talk to us about the compliance. And so with that, I will turn it over to Eloisa.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Let me know if this appears on your screen.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yes, I got it. Great.
Great. I'm going to speak slowly because I know that there's a bit of a time lag on my end. But good morning, everyone. It's glad to see everyone so well. Today, I ask your approval to submit the 2019 annual report on compliance monitoring to the governor's office and legislature. Now, this report is required by the federal government to remain eligible for Title II funds, but it is also an opportunity to share how our state is doing in terms of compliance monitoring, and also share our recommendations to remain compliant in the future. And before I dive into the report, I really think it's helpful to just briefly review what is compliance monitoring. Excuse me. Okay. Now, when we use the term compliance monitoring, this really means one thing in our world. It means monitoring inspections pursuant to the Federal Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention Act, or the JJDPA. Now, the JJDPA is the first federal law to address the treatment of juveniles in secure custody. Before this law, there really was nothing at all. Among its many achievements, this law established the federal standards on the protection of juveniles, and these standards are commonly called the JJDPA core requirements. Now, there are 4 requirements, as you see here, but compliance monitoring only involves the first 3. Why? Well, the first 3 core requirements set very specific and tangible standards on the custody and care of youth. And let's take a quick look at each one. The first requirement is the deinstitutionalization of status offenders. I have a very hard time saying it. A lot of people do. So we just commonly refer to it as the DSO requirement. Now, the federal language is on the slide, but I won't read it for you. But you just need to know that under this requirement, status offenders and non-offenders cannot be held in secure detention. This means that a youth who has committed no crime at all should not be held securely. And also youth who ran away or skipped school, possessed tobacco, possessed alcohol, or any other type of similar offense, they also should not be held securely. The second core requirement is separation. This means basically that there should be no sight and sound contact between juveniles and adults who are held securely. No sound contact, no visual contact. This means no opportunity to send or receive a direct message, no direct communication at all. And the last core requirement that makes up compliance monitoring is the jail removal requirement. The jail removal requirement establishes that adult jails and lockups should not hold juveniles securely for more than 6 hours. Under this rule, the clock starts running at entry and it only stops the moment that youth exits the facility. There is absolutely no pausing allowed. Now, taken together, when we conduct our compliance monitoring inspections, we are looking for compliance with these 3 core requirements. And just know that we have a different team that conducts state inspections according to state standards. But for Title II purposes, our compliance monitoring team must use these federal terms and apply only these federal standards. So every year, we report only violations of these 3 standards. So when we report to the federal office, which is the Office of Juvenile Justice and Delinquency Prevention, we are telling them, these are our DSO violations. Here's how many times status offenders and non-offenders were held securely. Here are all our separation violations. Thankfully, historically, in the past few years, California has had no separation violations. And last, we are telling them, here are our jail removal violations. These are the number of times youth were held for longer than 6 hours. So this report that I present to you today is a summary of what we reported to the federal government. Let's turn to the report now. What you need to know about the report is that it is very, it covers a very specific time period. It covers the 2019 federal fiscal year, which runs from October 2018 to September 2019. So it is not a calendar year, and it is very different from our California fiscal year. The second thing you need to keep in mind is that all of our rates of compliance are based on what the federal government tells us is our juvenile population. And so they told us your juvenile population is over 9 million. So we're going to use that number in all of our calculations. And last thing you should know is that our staff has monitored nearly 1,200 law enforcement facilities total. Among your handouts, there is an attachment A. There's no need to turn to it. I just wanted to point it out to you so that you know attachment A is an exact copy of what we submitted this year to the federal government. Now let's look at those standards. Every year, the federal office determines what is the acceptable standard of compliance. It's kind of like an acceptable amount of violations for the whole country and territory. And it states that are at or below that federal standard are deemed in compliance with the law. As you can see on your screen, California is well below the federal standard and thus remains in compliance with all 3 core requirements. Now, this is great news, but if we want to know how we can do better and improve our process and improve our relations, we need to take a closer look at the violations themselves. Okay, so towards that end, I created a map of the 2019 violations. This map is organized based on the number of violations by county. And as you can see, the lightest shade of blue indicates a county had only 1 violation, whereas gray indicates there were no violations. And the darkest shade of blue shows that a county had over 50 violations. You all received a PDF copy of this map. It's in the email, and at the bottom of that handout, there's a link. And if you click that link, it will take you to an interactive version of this map. This is what you may see when you click on that link. And when you click on a specific county, it will provide you more detailed information on the left-hand sidebar. So here I clicked on Stanislaus County. And as you can see, Stanislaus had a total of 5 JJDPA violations in 2019. And all of these violations occurred in one facility. And it also tells you the number of and kind of violations, as well as the reasons that were reported to the BSCC last year. I know that many of you are also interested in comparing the number of violations for the past 3 years. Here's one chart that looks solely at those numbers. As you can see, our numbers of violations have definitely decreased since 2003. But then within 2017, 18, 19, there's a little bit of ebb and flow. Again, I asked myself, how can we improve our process? How can we do better for the youth and for the counties? So I created a second map for all of you. Your second handout also contains a link to this interactive map. This map shows all violations in 2017, 2018, and 2019. It is also organized by county. The lightest shade of pink indicates counties that have only violations in 1 year, whereas the deepest shade shows which counties had violations in all 3 years. And when you click on that link, it will take you to an interactive map, which also provides more information in your left-hand bar when you select a county. Here, I selected Sacramento County as an example. And as you can see, Sacramento's violations for the past 3 years involved 2 facilities. It breaks down the violations by year. It was roughly 2 or 1 violation each year, so a total of 5. And I made a note to let you know that Sacramento PD accounted for all but 1 violation. So Sacramento PD had 4 violations. Now it is my hope that with this report and these maps, that you guys can start to see there is opportunity for local action and local collaboration. And for my part, I have started to reach out to each county's local juvenile justice commission. But there are things that the BSC is not the subject matter expert in. And in those areas, I definitely turn to you for guidance. For example, in the report, it states that there are some counties that still hold California runaways securely. You know, the BSCC is not an expert on on the treatment and care of California runaways. That's why we turn to you. And perhaps you are willing to work with me at our agency and even at a local level. And we could do a lot of things to develop strategies to address that issue. For example, maybe we could identify useful resources or craft best practices that we could share to those counties. Another example is that in the report, it states 33 jail removal violations. That's 1/3 of all jail removal violations occurred in 1 county due to 1 reason, and that reason was live scan delays. Again, the BSCC does not have authority over live scan issues, but perhaps we could work together to develop some strategies and maybe even work with the local Juvenile Justice Commission or with appropriate state contacts. Now, this report, as I said before, is just a summary of our past violations, but hopefully with this in mind, we can start to see that this is the start of future action and collaboration at the local level. And at this point, I would request your approval for the submission of this report with leave to make any modifications for clarity or accuracy and consistency or your input. But I also open it up to questions and open it also up to your suggestions. I welcome it all. So have at it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eloisa, for always providing such a great and easy to follow report. I do have a question. Carly?
Yeah, I actually had a question about the first of all, your maps are great and you always have a great presentation. So I really appreciate that. It makes it very easy to understand the data. But I was looking at the other attachment that we got that includes the state profile. It's the compliance detailed report. And this includes the different types of facilities that were inspected, as well as how many are in the state of those different subtypes. It's not the easiest document to read.
No.
So I just have to clarify for me because, so for instance, the number of juvenile detention facilities that received on-site inspections, it says there were only 5 that received on-site inspections out of the, I think it was 52 or 43, so only 10%. I'm curious why that number looks so much lower than, for instance, the inspections in the adult jails.
Oh yeah, that's a very, thank you for that question. That's actually a very common question that we receive, and actually confused me when I started doing this line of work. But the reason for the discrepancy that you will probably see not only in the federal numbers that we report and any other information that we have on our site is that this reporting tool developed by the federal government is very, very specific. And it also, so it's applying the federal definitions of juvenile detention facilities, but also the cycles are different. So whereas we are required to submit these reports annually and conduct our compliance monitoring sometimes, and compliance monitoring annually, our state cycle, our state system operates on a biennial system. So whereas I have, for example, 12 months to do my work, my colleagues who are inspecting them for state standards have 24. Ideally, they'll have 24 months to do theirs, to do their work. Also, you know, we've been able so I submitted this data at that time that information was available. So this is like a snapshot of where we were in January. It definitely has changed since then, but there's been, you know, once we submit, there's really no opportunity to update. So that's one reason for the change. It's just like OJGB asks for different things, but also they ask for it at a different time. I hope that addresses your question.
I guess let me just rephrase this, and it just seems like you're not going to a lot of detention juvenile facilities. But what I hear you saying is that it might also be a function of the timing, but yet it looks like there's so many adult facilities that you are going to. Across the 24-month cycle, how many juvenile facilities, like how much will that number ultimately increase then?
That needs, so under our state standards, that should be 100% at the end of our 2-year cycle.
So okay, I got it. So it's like a timing issue. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a couple more questions, but Eloisa, I want to follow up with that because even if they were on separate cycles, if there's 52 facilities, you would at least have half of them done. They would overlap any given cycle. And so having 5 really is an issue, is, you know, and I know there's some priority. And then also, I know that last year or year before, the compliance unit came to SACJJDP and asked for increase in the funding amount, specifically because we talked about wanting to see more compliance and more accountability at our juvenile facilities. So I don't know if that's a question for you or for Katie or Allison. And if you want to cover that now, or if you want to cover that at the end, because we do have other questions.
I can answer the question about the number of juvenile detention facilities. We were, the way the federal and the state cycles overlap, as Eloisa said, in a 2-year period, because of our state responsibilities, we do inspect 100% and do on-site visits 100% of the juvenile detention facilities. Why that number is low, and I agree it is low, we were finishing up the juvenile minimum standard regulation revision, and we spent about 6 months providing really intense technical assistance out in the field to get people comfortable with the regulations. And so our inspections, our on-site inspections got delayed, not delayed, but we were wrapping up that process. So In the next cycle, you'll see sort of an increase to even out that low number here.
Okay, I think we had a question. Thank you, Allison. I think we had a question from Amanda and then Michelle.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to be referencing your report that you sent on second paragraph from the bottom on page 3. You mentioned that 3 counties accounted for the most jail removal violations in the whole state. I see this as a big opportunity for us as a state, and it sounds like you do too, because you wanted to provide technical assistance to these counties. Can you describe the technical assistance you are envisioning to decrease the jail removal violations?
Yes, I can speak to that. So for certain things that we're familiar with, like for example, some reasons were just because lack of training at the staff level or lack of adequate staff. So for those common issues that that we have traditionally handled in the past, our technical assistance could be a conversation, or it could be an in-person meeting, or maybe it's even providing them with more materials and education, something succinct that they could use. I know, for example, in the past, I believe in 2013, we developed an 8-minute video, and I know that even today, that there are some agencies who still play that 8-minute video as part of their internal training. There are some issues that do occur that the BOC doesn't have the authority to address, and that's where we're, I'm putting it out there for SACJJDP as an opportunity to say, how can we work together, or who do we need to contact, or what do you guys want to do to address these certain issues. For example, one of them is the live scan delays. That's handled by a different state agency. That's actually at a local county level. It's just very interesting that 1/3 of all of the violations are due because local agencies are still waiting for the return results of those live scans. So I mean, for these types of issues that we have not traditionally dealt with, or we are not the appropriate agency, or do not have the expertise, that's where I really welcome your input and your guidance of what are some things you guys would like to do at a local level.
And then I just had a comment for you regarding this detention of status offenders. Mm-hmm. Starting January 1, AB 1235 was implemented, youth homelessness prevention centers, and in the definition, I believe it specifically states that these youth homelessness prevention centers can take runaway youth. There's 13 licensed facilities in the state of California. So I think that might be a great resource to just educate the community or counties with these centers that they can take runaways if they are not already, and specifically diversions from juvenile justice.
Thank you. Can I reach out to you if I have questions about that piece of law?
100%. Yep, definitely.
Thank you.
Great. That's great. Thank you so much for making that connection as well. I think Michelle had a couple questions.
Yes. So a couple of things. One of them has to do with the out-of-state runaways, because with the work that we do around trafficking, because we're in this ICJ process, we had a big conversation about this probably about 18 months ago, when our department was looking to not incarcerate kids from out of state. And we were told by the ICJ administrator in Sacramento that he strongly advised us not to get out of the compact. So we still, house kids from out of state that would be considered runaways, they don't have delinquent matters. So, and with that, sometimes we're very involved in the live scan issue, and I've had numerous phone calls at midnight on occasions with Sacramento about the holdup, on trying to identify young people. And so I'm just, and I would love to be a part of any of those conversations that come up with regards to live scan, because if a young person is out of state, or we don't have a prior live scan on a youth, then from what I understand is it has to be done manually, and at the state level, there just aren't people at work 24 hours a day, especially at night. And so they have to wait till the next morning in order to have somebody manually do something. And then the other thing, just as a comment too, that I would love to be a part of as well, if there's anything about that, same thing about jail removal. Because sometimes we don't identify our youth as youth, law enforcement detains them in adult jails, 16-year-olds, because they give birth dates that show that, that they're somebody else and they're over the age of 18. And so we have these issues from, fairly common, where 2 or 3 days later, we realize this is a kid and we have to then, reinsert them back down to juvenile. So just again, some of those things are just kind of all interweaved into each other. So again, I would love to be a part of that. And then just on sight and sound, one last comment and then I'll be done is, we still have kids under the age of 18 who are testifying in court against their exploiter, sometimes housed in the same jail lockup as adults. And we're working really hard in LA to fix that, but there is sight and sound issues happening. That's all.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I'm going to reach out to you. Perhaps we could share information and work together on that. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Let me just check the chat line to see. Dr. BJ has a question.
Can you unmute yourself, Dr. BJ?
So I just want to get clarification. I was looking at the year-to-year comparisons. And then when Carly pointed out that there was only 5 facilities that were reviewed for this, on this attachment for this report. So are we comparing the review of only 5 facilities to more than 5 facilities for the other years that the comparison was done? I'm just curious.
Oh, so let me take a step back. Our on-site inspections are just one way we obtain information and one way we verify information, even though for various reasons, a lot more on-site inspections did not take place during this cycle. Our team is still collecting information. For example, we still have the annual report. We still have the month-to-month reporting on the monthly. We have a monthly report on the minors in detention. We also have reports that juvenile halls and camps are still required to complete every time an incident triggers one of the JJDPA core requirements. So all of that information is still getting to us. So even though it might say at the time that this data was submitted and this report was written, only 5 juvenile halls had on-site inspections, we still had a lot of information reported to us on a periodic and as-is basis to give us a more complete picture. So just for your knowledge, we've traditionally had 100% reporting or sharing of information for all facilities in the state of California. And that's something we're very proud of and something we're working on. Something we learned from our last audit is, okay, we have 100% right now with our local facilities. How can we push it to include the DJJ facilities? So this report is not just those 5 facilities. It is 100% of all those local places reporting to us still. Does that help answer your question?
Well, yeah. Well, my follow-up question is well, then do on-site inspections ever find discrepancies between what is being reported and what you find when you actually go to the facility and look at the records directly?
Oh yes, definitely. And these are, we've always extended the invitation to your committee, to you members, to join myself on a local compliance monitoring inspection. They report to us electronically via our monthly reports. Sometimes they talk to us via email. And whenever we conduct a on-site inspection, what we'll do is pull and request the original records and compare it. And if there is some cause for discrepancy or there's something to give me pause, I will go for that extra step and ask to pull that youth's entire file. or maybe even interviewed the arresting officer at the time. And what we do is we make a note of those discrepancies on our actual report, and we make sure we share that with staff so they can update our numbers appropriately.
Okay, so then my question again though is that in this in the data reported and the graph that you sent,
yes.
That you shared, I just want to get clear. So was the data, regardless of how it would, whatever the self-reporting is, was the data as it relates to on-site inspections of 5 for this report, was that being compared to more on-site inspections for the previous years that were in the comparison?
So it's not limited to the 5 for these reportings of, oh, okay, so just to answer your question, I don't know how to address your question, because I'm not looking at, for me, when I'm reporting the data to the feds, I'm not looking at how the information's coming to me, just that when it gets to me, I make sure I verify it. So for me, it is 100% all the time, all the way, because we make sure we submit them all, and I verify, and myself personally or our staff will go and verify, and sometimes ask for additional records. So my concern and the concern of the OJJDP was that we had the information. But I do hear you. I do hear you that when you look at it, you know, that 5 number is just really glaring.
Well, I you know, I hate to be, you know, to perseverate on this, but, you know, as a researcher myself, I get what you're saying, but but the previous years, the data that's being reported and we're being comparing, those years weren't, the data you received wasn't just from 5 on-site inspections. For those years, you got all the self-report data, but there was also, whatever the timing and things was going, there were more on-site inspections that also provided data to those years' final numbers.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. I just wanted to.
I understand where you're coming from. Is how could we easily compare numbers when the sources are so. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Chief Brown had a question.
Actually, just a comment. I agree with what Michelle Guyman just said a few minutes ago. And I support her being involved in it. Some of the things that she's talking about, we have also had issue with. And I think it's important for someone with that operational knowledge to be able to have some input into how some of these things happen. So that was my comment. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I look forward to working with you.
Yeah. And so I want to make a couple comments. You know, I think last year when we had the federal monitor come out, he brought forward this issue of compliance and that we really needed to shore that up. I mean, we passed our inspection, so to speak, but he took a point to pull me aside and to specifically bring forward this issue. So I think it's something that's critical that we need to address. And as is a SACJJB, this is one of our core compliance things that we need to be in charge of. Really want to stress the importance of doing that. I know that local juvenile justice commissions in many cases are doing inspections as well. And so if there's a need for additional hands-on to be able to do this, I really want to encourage the BSCC to be working with the local juvenile justice commissions to make sure that we are doing the proper number of inspections. We have to have more than 5, and so that we do that. And then also, you know, the SACJJB members have expressed an interest in being involved and being able to support, whether that's through their local commission or whether that's through your office. I know we've been told that we've been invited, but I don't know that we get like a calendar that says these are the dates that we're going to be inspecting LA, or this is the dates we're going to be inspecting Sacramento, and who would like to go. Because as we are also busy, you know, we're not going to remember to follow up with you and ask you when will you come out there. So the request is several. You know, one is we want to be involved, and so we want to know when those inspections are happening in our communities so that if we are available, we can be a part of them. 2, we want to know how locally the local juvenile justice commissions can play a bigger role to ensure that there's more facilities being inspected. And then 3, how can the SEC really meet the mandates by overseeing more of the facilities? So that's a lot. Sorry about that.
Rachel, can I just jump in for one quick second? Yes, absolutely. I think one of the things we don't have is a calendar of inspections. They're coordinated directly by the field representatives that go to each county. So I encourage each of you to reach out to Aloysia and to me, and we can start coordinating. It is kind of difficult sometimes because we have, 3 different field representatives with different regions, but we are happy to get members involved in inspections.
Great. So maybe what we would ask is that just when inspections are scheduled, if you wouldn't mind letting us know, even if you just let Tim and I know when those are, and we can reach out to the membership, and then we can be in charge of letting them know, contacting them and saying an inspection is going to be scheduled. And I know these things have to be done scheduled in advance. So there's usually enough notice that then we can let people know in that region, if you're interested in attending, this is when it's going to be. So that would be a request.
Yes, we, right now how our systems work, I don't always have the exact dates in advance, but we will do our very, very best. And again, it would be helpful. I don't know if everybody is interested, we can figure out the best way to coordinate, or if there are certain members that are interested. We don't necessarily have that data at our fingertips, but we will do our very, very best to get people involved with the information that we do have.
I think that, I'll just say again that if you let us know, and I know from doing inspections myself, locally here, it isn't something that from one day to day. I usually have to contact the chief or the sheriff or whoever, and we have to schedule it. So your monitors are your staff, so they should be sending you their schedule, and then once you have that, then letting Tim know, and then rather than put that burden on your shop to have to contact us, maybe, I'm sorry, Tim, but I'm going to put that burden on you to contact, us, because I do think that most members want to get engaged, and that way we can then just do that. You have to reply to us by this date to let us know if you're interested, and see, maybe no one can go, but maybe you can get folks that goes. But if we can start there, and we can modify the process if it becomes a problem. Okay. Does that sound fair?
Yes, thanks.
Okay, great. I think I've got lots of little chats going on here. I'm trying to read it really quick. I think Carly, did you have any other comments?
Hey, Brian,
I think Judge Beck, I think you might have had some comments.
Yes. With the local commissions, if you know you have a very productive one, they're basically able to do the work. I don't know if BSCC is comfortable with just saying, "Oh, local commission, you've done your job, and we're willing to accept that information." Because as you just said, it's hard. You got to calendar all these things for a number of different locations throughout individual county. So if you have a productive, decent local commission, I think it can be used very effectively, and I think that that takes some work to know who's doing the right job and who's not. Now, also with the local commission, there's a statutory provision where if there is a violation, they will contact the presiding juvenile court judge in that particular county, who then has the ability to contact the violators, if you will, and give them the opportunity to clean up their act, and then set another meeting where the local commission will come out and re-inspect. And eventually, if things are not corrected appropriately, the presiding judge can actually shut down, if you will, that particular facility for acceptance of any juveniles at all. And I'm wondering, does the BSCC ever employ that same type of method where they've contacted the local presiding juvenile court judge in any particular county and said, hey, we have an issue we need you to address? Because I've had that happen with the local commission a couple of times where I have then contacted the sheriff or whoever to straighten out the problem. Does the BSCC ever contact local judges like that? Or
well, what we do is we definitely do have a mail out each year to the local judges and the local juvenile justice commission saying, here's a list of all the places in your county that have held youth securely. Here are our numbers. But I do hear you. I hear your idea, and to set that, to take baby steps towards a more meaningful collaboration. I have definitely talked with some local juvenile justice commissioners to see how we could meet and provide context to what we share to them. Because I think right now it's just a matter of, okay, this is what I do from our federal perspective. What can you do? And when I share information with you, how can you help you understand what's in your power to address that versus what I could do? So there's definitely a start to having those conversations. But traditionally, or historically, we've always had that annual mail out to the local JJCs.
Okay. All right, but no specific contact to a presiding juvenile court judge saying, hey, I got a problem with this particular, police department unit that has been holding kids for over 6 hours. Can you, judge, contact them and tell them, this is a violation, it needs to be cleaned up, and we're going to have the local commission come back or BSCC is going to come back and check your records to make sure you're in compliance?
To my knowledge, it has not happened, but it's definitely on the table and it could be an option. I know that I personally try to take a more open approach of, hey, these are the issues I see, this is how you could fix them. And then if there's no further action after that definitely we start to brainstorm, okay, what are other ways we could address this problem? And what you shared is definitely an option on the table.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think that we need to have a motion to move this report forward. And we've had a lot of discussion on the report. I realize that we might not necessarily be happy with all of the findings on the report, but we do need to have a motion to be able to submit this report forward. So, we've had a lot of discussion, and I know that Allison and Eloisa will take that to heart, and we're going to work on continuing to work on this issue and continuing to involve the SACJJDP members. So I appreciate your being open to that. So with that, can I get a motion to accept this report?
Chair Rios?
Yes.
Chair Rios?
Yes.
Prior to moving towards a motion, can we please open it up for public comment first?
Absolutely.
And then
I
if
keep
there are
forgetting.
none, we can move.
Okay.
That's why I'm here.
Do we have any public comment?
Seeing no public comment.
All right, then seeing no public comment, I do have a move to accept the report from Judge Beck.
Second.
Okay. Who?
Or Jackson.
Great. Okay, so all those in favor? I don't know how we do this on. Everyone say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right.
I thought last time we had to do roll call again. Sorry.
You do have to do a roll call vote.
Thank you, Erin.
All right, let's do roll call then.
We have a comment? Okay. All right, for the motion on the floor, we have a vote. Rachel Rios, what is your vote?
Aye.
Carol Biondi, your vote? Carol Biondi? Okay. Honorable Brian.
Aye.
Sorry, thank you. Brian Beck?
Aye.
Yeah. DJ Davis? Dr. Davis, your vote? I'll come back to you.
I'm here now.
Okay, sorry, thank you. Your vote?
This mute thing, I'm not used to getting muted. I'm usually running my own meetings, but anyway,
That's okay. What's your vote, sir?
I actually am going to abstain.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. Thank you. Dr. Dirkhuizing?
Aye.
Thank you. Juan Gomez?
Aye.
Thank you. Michelle Guyman?
Aye.
Thank you. Susan Herbert?
Aye.
Thank you. Gordon Jackson?
Aye.
Thank you. Kent Mendoza?
Aye.
Thank you. Elliot Hausman, can you pronounce your last name, please, so I can stop messing it up?
I appreciate that you asked. It's Trubiate.
Turbiate. Okay, thank you so much.
Abstain.
Thank you. Amika Mota?
Aye.
Winston Peters?
Aye.
Thank you. Dante Williams?
Aye.
Thank you. Amanda Clifford?
Aye.
Thank you. Nancy O'Malley?
Aye.
Thank you. Ramon Leja?
Aye.
Thank you. Nancy Navarre is absent. Chief Michelle Scray Brown?
Aye.
Thank you. And Miguel Garcia?
Aye.
Okay. We do have a majority in favor.
All right. The motion passes. Thank you so much. And we look forward to we'll talk about possibly having this on agenda on a regular basis so that we can make sure it doesn't get put on the back burner. Okay. Thank you. So we are almost at 12 o'clock, but we have a lot of business still to do. And so I hope that you are able to hang in there with us a little bit longer, but we understand if you need to move forward. Let me ask staff, are there any decision items that need to be made as we go, voting items that need to be made as we go forward on the agenda?
Madam Chair, there is one item in the chair updates where we review the calendar. We're actually going to propose another addition since we had the April 1st meeting canceled due to COVID-19 response. We were proposing a Zoom meeting for August 6th, Thursday, August 6th from 10 till we're done. That is one item that we would need consensus.
Great. Okay, so I think we could do that probably fairly quickly. I'm going to go ahead then and just shift a little bit to the conversation and also give an opportunity for the BSCC to give some updates too. But I think as some of our members indicated, it's a really difficult time. We are all heavy with hearts, to see the inhumanity that still exists and in our criminal justice system and throughout. And so if it wasn't enough dealing with the COVID and the isolation in place, knowing the impact that it has on so many of our communities of color, we are once again confronted with this. And so the conversation I've seen has been around, what can we do? What should we do as a body? And should we have a statement that reflects our outrage and our concern and our call to action on that? And so I wanted to be able to have some space to be able to let you talk about that, and also the BSCC to talk about that as well. So I'm going to open the floor.
I think it was.
Go ahead, Carol.
I think it was Juan that first suggested it. So I think I'd first like to hear from the young people, particularly Juan and Kent.
I look younger, but shit, I'm 37. So I'll defer.
Young, I'm 76.
Yeah, okay, yeah, okay. Well, I'll pass it on to some of the more youthful members, if that's okay. And if they don't, then I can roll. But I like to share the floor, the space with them first, and then I can say something. I just wanted to make sure that we talked about it.
I appreciate that one.
Yeah.
I would like to share. I think today and to this time does bring up a lot of emotions. I think the way we communicate with those that sometimes we're supposed to feel like that they're the solution to a lot of the problems, because it's like, what do you call if you're in trouble, or what do you call something or an accident? It's like 911. And just to kind of see, you know, the constant consistency of like you know, racial injustice, and like how the biases is like placed on you. I always tell myself, like, you know what, I think why I don't get pulled over as much as often I feel like I'm supposed to, is because I have an alumni little plate on my back. But you know, have you seen me today and I was walking or in a neighborhood like in a black car, without that, I feel like there was just an immediate bias will be placed on me. And I feel that, you know, with the death of George Floyd, like it is and the other injustices that have occurred, it highlights the lack of accountability that again that folks have served us. And so again, it brings a lot of frustration, and you know, I just sometimes I've kept my comments really close and not really onto social media, but because like my life and like my work entail, you know, trying to eliminate, you know, the racial injustice from what I've experienced, and like from what I'm continuing to see is and it's a challenge, and so I just hope that everyone here is able to see and recognize that our community is in need. Our community is hurting. Black Lives Matter, and more. I think that I'm just an echo of a lot of what America is feeling today, and I want to pass it on to whoever is next.
Yeah, I'll go. I don't even know the exact question, but I'm just going based on what you're saying. I think for me, you know, when I on the first night of the riots on Friday night, literally what I did, I went to my roof because I live in downtown LA, you know, back in the neighborhood. And one thing that was going through my mind as I'm listening to the riots and just everything that's going in the news, looking at Twitter, it made me realize how the country we live in, you know, and like the issue that we're working, right? Like, it literally brought me back to juvenile hall. It brought me back to DJJ, and it brought me back to this institution. Why? Because the way riots, and I feel like America functions in the same way that the prison functions. Like there's the same structure that you see in a prison, you see it in America. Like, I don't know, it just like, it's crazy how we live, like, you would think that police brutality, all this is not related to the issue they're working on. They're very related to the issues. This is literally, you know, like, even like what Miguel said, like, there's times when I walk and, you know, I'm supposed to feel safe when I'm around supposedly police officers, but I never, ever feel safe around them. If anything, I feel uncomfortable. If anything, you know, I might be driving and we feel weird when they're around, you know, and why is it? You know, it's supposed to be they're supposed to make us feel comfortable, and I feel because of the trauma and everything they've done, there's no way for them to make anybody in the community feel safe. So I personally, like, I was a little bit frustrated with everything that's going on because it sucks that it has to lead up to something like this to create real change. And, you know, like, when I saw a video of this one kid that is 13-year-old kid got shot up in New York 2 days ago, 18 times or something like that, right? By the police. And I look at it like, why do they shoot this guy 18, like, why are they even working this job? If you're so afraid, to why are you even in this job? You know, like, here we are, people in the neighborhood. I literally live in the neighborhood. I don't have no gun, nothing. I'm in more danger than a lot of people than cops, you know, and I'm not afraid, you know, and it's like, just seeing that is frustrating, and it just speaks to how much of important it is that us, people like myself, are doing this work, you know, because if, let's say, if none of us were being in this SAC committee right now, none of us formally incarcerated, I don't know where this committee will be going. I don't know what type of discussion will be happening. So I think that it's important that we remind ourselves that this issue is very related to what we're talking about. A lot of the kids that we're talking about in the system experience what George Floyd has experienced, whether if it's indirectly or just through family, community. The trauma comes from the same place. And I think that let's not forget that they're very related. You know, what we're trying to do right here and what we're trying to solve is also trying to solve that. What we do here is going to help end police brutality, hopefully, and end racial and all that disparities around our people of color. So I don't know. I guess I don't even know if that was the response, but I was a little frustrated just seeing all of this because, you know, it takes all of this just to get something changed. And even then, it's not a lot, it's not enough. And it sucks because a lot of people are, you know, condemning and saying that these are looters and all this, and I get it, but it's like, how do you expect society to put fear on the government when the government puts fear on us every single day with guns and badges and put, you know, the first time I was put the first person to put a gun in my face or on me was not a gang member, it was a police officer at the age of 13, trying to scare me. So it's like, those are the experiences that we're experiencing. This is real things that are happening. It's not that we hate the police and all, it's just that they're really not doing things for the community. And so that's just frustrating because we have to do these types of things. It makes us look as criminals and all these looters, but how else can we show them that we have power, you know? So I personally, I don't want to say, I was going to say something controversial, but I want to say, I personally would have loved to see the White House burned down.
Well, let's get.
I think I would jump in there, just not that I'm young, you know, as our previous speakers, but I can contribute a couple of things that I just want to be sure that we're crystallizing our focus. I was 12 years old when Martin Luther King was assassinated, and so I remember very, very clearly. I think back to conversations with my grandfather because my grandfather's grandfather was a slave. So there's some context there. When I think, and I had this enlightening conversation with one of my neighbors who just didn't get, you know, he's a white guy who didn't get that the plea and the reminder that Black Lives Matter was not diminishing. No one has ever suggested that all lives don't matter. And I don't know if it would be helpful if the campaign is Black Lives Matter too, or that Black lives don't matter as less or less than others. But that's the focus. And when I shared with them, and I used the story of the situation in Central Park with a young lady who was kind of sicking the police on Mr. Cooper, who reminded her to leash her dog. You know, the idea that I'm having an incredibly different experience than he's having in this country that we call ours, because of something that I cannot change, and that's the color of my skin. So this wake-up call, of course, always making the distinction between the looters and the opportunists and those people doing that, always drawing attention to the reality that there are bad apples in every bunch. So there's no generalization about all police, all government, all of anybody. There is this realization in 2020 that my life should matter just as much as someone who has blonde hair and blue eyes. And in certain sectors of our society, such isn't the case. In others, it is. So it's really drawing that awareness and saying enough is enough. You know, if we're, you know, I used to live in France. I'm hearing all of my friends overseas say, this is insane for your country to have done so poorly dealing with COVID and now do so poorly yet again with coming to terms with the idea that you all had access to watching the death of a human being on screen. And, you know, at a senseless murder. So if we're thinking about our statement or what we could do as a body, which I'm not opposed to, I just want to be sure that we've crystallized what is the call to action in this nation, and also who is our audience. You know, in what ways can we influence thinking, you know, and influence change, you know, as opposed to just being angry.
Well,
that's my 11 cents.
That's good. I wanted to call on Dr. BJ, who wanted to make a brief comment. You're on mute.
You're on mute.
Yeah, I have no idea what kind of statement we can make as a board, and I'll defer to some of the younger members to rare comment. But the one thing that I want to say, I've been through this before, just as a previous speaker with Martin Luther King, and then with Rodney King, and so my brief comment is this: is that as a person of color, we need white allies. I'm doing a presentation this next in a week about GLBTQ treatment with African Americans. So it's intersectional. And one of the big parts of what I'm doing is talking about having transgender ally, becoming a transgender ally, becoming a LGBTQ ally, because people listen to their own tribe more than they listen to anybody else, regardless of what else is going on. And Black and brown people, we need white allies, because the white structure, systemic structure in America is going to listen to people that are from their own tribe much more than they're going to listen to people like me and Juan and things like that. We can make a lot of noise. We've been doing that for a long time. But I'm just sharing that with people that are here, part of this board and beyond, is we need white allies to speak to the inequality in this structure.
Thank you, Dr. Vijay. I think Carol had a comment, and then Juan.
Yes, I forwarded CJJ's our overall organizing body that suggested that we take advantage of the resources. Burns Institute, I know, and I don't know the other one, Race Forward, to see what we might focus on to best support the youth that we focus on. We exist to help. And I know that one of my first thoughts at the time was, during COVID, the youth that are detained really don't have good access to their families. I know in LA, they certainly don't. I know that in other counties, they've made huge efforts to provide Zoom and FaceTime, and even in some counties, they're doing distance visits. It's amazing. But I worry about what's happening in the country today, how the staff have been explaining this to these young people who don't have access to their families. And I find it frightening, especially in the halls where, and again, my only experience is LA, where they are not trained. They do not have the proper training that many of them want. I've heard them ask for it, and it has not materialized in any of the revolving door of chiefs we've had. And we have another one who has no juvenile experience, no probation experience. So I just wonder if there isn't some way we could identify some funds we have to create a package of resources that, with the help of a Burns Institute that's just superb on this issue, that we could provide to juvenile departments to help inform departments to help staff, help kids deal with this at this time when they are the only ones translating this just profoundly troubling time to the youth that are detained in these facilities. I mean, it's not very articulately stated, but it really is such a worry to me how these youth are being informed about what's going on. I just can't even imagine.
So, Carol, I just want to clarify, are you asking if there should be one standard kind of message that would go to every youth in local detention, or are you asking that we ask the county what they are saying to young people?
Well, I know that the Burns Institute is one resource of excellence on race relations and youth. I mean, Kent spoke earlier. He's working with them right now on our youth work group as we try to move these children away from probation. We've hired the Burns Institute. And no, I was just thinking about how we might use what CJJ is recommending to us to take advantage of the resource of the Burns Institute to provide some guidance to juvenile probation departments as to how Burns Institute, we could introduce the Burns Institute's expertise to juvenile probation departments to guide them in how they could help youth deal with this, provide the information to youth that are detained that do not really have access to their parents at this time.
So I'm gonna, I'll wait and have BSCC respond a little bit later, but there are quite a list of folks that want to make some comments, and I want, in the interest of time, I do want to make sure that we get to some of our other agenda items, but I have Juan, Nancy, and Dante.
Yeah, well, thank you everyone. And I just want to say it's obviously a very sensitive time. I myself am not okay. All these events are taking place because if it wasn't for people blatantly being murdered and we've seen the footage, I'm not sure if we would be okay with this conversation. Any other time that we would have this type of conversation where we're talking about like white power, white supremacy, racism, and I'm blowing up the chats on purpose, right? Because we are so oftentimes apolitical, acontroversial, that we talk over, around, and tiptoe around the stuff and never get to it. And so for us, like, we do got to release a statement. Maybe we have to reach out to, I know BSCC has what's that working group, the Racial, Ethnic, and Disparities group, right? Well, we have to have a joint statement and say, we have to condemn this. We have to say, the reality is incarceration is one of the afflictions of racism, right? They go hand in hand, detention, all those things. I'm not even surprised that the conversation around health and moving into a health frame is no longer, up in the air. All of a sudden it's about moving the money to probation. And it's just,
I agree with you. I'm just worried about these kids being told, this being translated by probation officers to these kids. I agree we need to have a statement. I didn't mean to take it off that subject. But.
Yeah, I'm just saying just in general, but I agree, but it's just like, I'm not, Chair Rios, I would just ask you, I'm not sure if you can convene a separate call, if someone can start drafting some stuff. I know that things exist, but I think it's okay. It's not too controversial. I think it's our duty and obligation that the governor knows where we stand with this. And there's nothing controversial about fairness and truth. That's all I'll say. Thank you.
I agree. Thank you, Juan. I'm going to ask everyone to make their comments, briefly so that we can get through to everyone. I have Nancy and Dante, and then I have, I think, is it Chief Brown or? Yes. Well, let's go with Nancy and Dante first.
Thank you. I agree with what Juan said. I think that, one of my questions was, how, how to work the politics of having a committee issue a statement, but that's Katie and other people know what the protocol is for that. But I do think, especially sitting in the role that we are of juvenile justice and delinquency prevention, that we have an important voice to talk about things like equity and the historical racism and other things like that in the context also of the work that we're doing to end those terrible practices that have existed in the past. And I think some of the information we had from our report show a great improvement in the work that's being done. But I do agree with Juan, and I apologize, but I have to go because I have another meeting in about 5 minutes. I'm going to stay on, but then I'll just disappear quietly. Thank you.
Okay, so I know we have some business items to do. I don't want to not hear everyone's voices. If you still want to make a comment, or if you're in agreement, I think the recommendation is that the SACJJDP come up with a statement that talks about this. I think that's what I'm hearing as the recommendation. We can continue to have conversation on that, or we can ask if someone wants to. Do we need a motion on that?
I'll move it. Carol.
Okay. I'm not asking BCC, do we need a motion on that, or can we just do that?
I think you can just do it, Chair Rios. We don't have it on the agenda, but I just want to provide just a little bit of a staff voice here to say, you know, if this committee seems to be moving toward a consensus concept for a statement, which you absolutely can just simply make, that we can talk about some of the details about, you know, to whom is it addressed? Is it a broad statement? Whatever it is. I mean, I agree with a lot of the commentary that has been made. We do tiptoe around these issues. And I think in this collective moment of heartbreak, it's time to say something a little bit more direct about what this committee wants to say on the topic. So not quite sure how to get to the language of it. And if you want, we can kind of talk about that too. I think timing is important. You want to say something rather quickly, but it could be, you know, your statement, Chair Rios, on behalf of the committee or some such thing. We can't do a motion and a vote since it's not on the agenda. Sorry about that, but that's just that.
Okay. So in moving as far, because I know a lot of people are there, can we get a general consensus? Do people feel, maybe just thumbs up, do people feel, since we're not voting here, do people feel comfortable with us writing a statement? It could be part of our SACJJDP in front of our page. We'll work with the BSCC to determine, and then maybe reach out to a couple of members to help us articulate that in a way that represents the group's feelings. Would you be okay with that? Thumbs up if you're okay with that. Okay.
Yes.
I hope staff are looking at all those thumbs up there.
Can we see all the thumbs?
Okay. All right. And then just really quick, I'm just going to open. Is there any, you know, comments that people want to make on this? Any more comments? I think we've heard a lot of really rich dialogue, and I agree that it's important that as a state body, how can we not say something, right? How can we not address this?
I also think what's important about what we do, unlike a lot of other, I mean, the CJJ and everything, we really do need to talk about children. I mean, a lot of the statements from the other organizations, you know, Black Lives Matter, but we deal with children and what children have to face. And the fact that if we don't do the right thing at the beginning, they end up in a horrible place. And so we really have to, I think we have we have to do this. And I think it should be strong. I think we have to make a strong statement about what we do.
Great, thank you. And
yeah,
go ahead, Dante, go ahead.
Yeah, obviously, if anyone isn't aware, this is an extremely difficult situation. And it's not a situation, it's a reality. It's a reality that we face on a daily basis. And the major part of the difficulty is it being a clear reality? Is it being something that you experience on a daily basis? Is it having ubiquitous evidence of these situations and this reality, yet constantly experiencing denial, experiencing downplaying, and experiencing the interjection of other narratives? And I'm so far beyond the point of controversy. what's controversial to me isn't this subject, and it ought not to be, and I think that is just absolute lunacy. But controversy is the fact that people are not standing up for righteousness, and people are not standing up for justice. And that is clearly something that is missing. And I think it is imperative, and it is our duty that we stand on that. So yes, we need a statement, and yes, we need to realize the situation that is at hand and the inequity and the disparities that Black and brown people are facing in this country. And we need to interject that into the work that we do on a daily basis. And that needs to look like system reform. So what I would say and encourage you to do is understand that there are a lot of Black people that you're working with that are hurting, that are struggling, trying to hold back tears, trying to be professional in a meeting, but they're broken down. And even just acknowledging it, letting them know that you stand with them is imperative, but we need more than that. We need action. So yes, the bare minimum that we can do is release a statement.
I hear you, Dante. I appreciate you. I appreciate your comments, and I stand with you. I think you're right. The bare minimum is the letter, but you know, you kind of propel us to the next topic. The next step is, what do we do? Carly had some comments in her chat about that we have a reducing ethnic disparities subcommittee. And for the last year, I will be frank, it has been a little bit frustrating that we have been trying to convene this committee to do some of the most important work that we think needs to happen. We had a conversation on this earlier in the week, and we are putting one more call out to them to say either convene or we need you to step up or step back, because we don't have time. This has to be a priority. This committee infused SACJJDP funding, the RED funding, into all of our proposals. We thought it was that important that every proposal that was funded by SACJJDP had to have a component of RED. But now we're at a point where we need to have more intentional and focused work. And I'll let Tim talk a little bit about the consultant that we've been given access to through SACJJDP, but also to let this committee know that we are at a point with our existing RED committee that we really need them to step forward, or we need to start reconvening a new committee because we can no longer wait. As you can see, we can no longer wait. And that's one of the action steps that I think our committee can do beyond writing a letter. The second action step that I think is really important for us to keep in mind, and it is part of our agenda, is we're going to be talking about what is our strategy. We were supposed to have, as you know, kind of an offsite to really talk about what we wanted to do and really put forward our issues. We needed to put that off because of COVID. And so we want to do that in August in another Zoom meeting. We're not sure whether we'll be able to do it any other way, but we don't want to put it off. This is important that we need to have those conversations, and we need to identify what are our priorities and what do we want to work for, what do we want to work with. And I think that this is something that we would all agree is an important priority for us. And then the third area that I think we need to have intentionality around is, what does our next 3-year state plan look like? Because we now, by February of next year, which sounds like a long time, but not really, we have to turn in that plan. And if you remember from the last time, we took this time to do our kind of a team building, our strategic planning, and then we were able to then start looking at what we wanted to include as priorities in our 3-year plan. So I think those are 3 opportunities before us to really do something more than just write a letter. We have 3 opportunities that we can do something and make some change here. And so with that, I'm going to ask Tim to maybe just give a quick update on the RED, and just again, thank you for your very candid and very personal conversation, because we are all hurting, and we should all be hurting by what we've seen. So Tim.
So give me 1 second. I'm going to share a screen of the document that was handed out. I'm not going to, for the spirit of the moment, I'm not going to do too much around the background. You guys are very familiar with how we've gotten to this point. as far as reaching forward, and both, as Chair Rios has stated, integrating our RED effort into each of our 12 existing programs, and then also the second part of taking a look forward and doing really a deep data dive on a statewide and a county level, and providing a report of some sort, or some sort of data analysis that would be informative and inform decision making. So to give you a quick update where we're at, we asked for technical assistance at the request of SACJJDP when we had discussed our intentions, and they stated they had a new technical service provider under contract as of last November, and that they had stated that it may be beneficial for us to reach out to them, so that if in this process there was any way we could do any cost savings and allow them to pick up the tab of a technical service provider, that we would then potentially be able to use the funding set aside to actually have interventions in the end post-project. So we did this in a two-stage report or process after talking with SACJJDP. The first stage was to have a service provider assist us in the development of a scope of work moving forward. We actually now have been approved for that. We have been approved for that for a while now, starting back in March, and have been proceeding forward with Dr. Moises Prospero. He is assisting me, Chair Rios, and as we move forward in setting up a meeting that will happen in July for a scope of work development type of ESC meeting. So a couple things I just want to make sure you're aware of that we are working on in this process. There's three parts. We want to develop a scope of work that, or we want to develop a document that informs decision making at this meeting, similar to an issue paper that you've seen if you've been involved in ESCs. And we really are looking at 4 specific components of that. We want that report to be replicable annually, so that we can continue to feed data into this, study trends, take a look at whether we're showing improvement, whether we've had improvement over time. We want the data to be reliable. We want the data elements to inform our decision making. And then we also want to be compliant with OJJ reporting requirements, which have changed in the JJRA. If you remember, we had 10 different data point elements. It's now reduced to 5. Not that we can't expand beyond that. Those are some questions I will answer in this process. And then also what we're looking at is we're taking the evaluation of the state and county data collection capabilities. Currently, the Cal DOJ and their research department has a juvenile court and probation statistics system. We're getting a feel for the scope of what they collect, how reliable it is, et cetera, and then analyzing also the county reporting process. And then also we want to review the JJRA and to make sure that our definitions match up at a state level compared to the federal level. And I'll give you an example of one. Diversion. At a state level, we collect diversion data at a couple of points: at probation prior to sentencing, and then also court diversions as well. We have reconciled it in a way where we can actually meet that diversion definition in compliance with what OJJDP their definition is as well on a national level. So an example, there are a number of definitions along that path. We're working through that, and it'll inform our decision points for the scope of work meeting. So next steps, we've reached out, as Chair Rios said, to our SACJAB, our subcommittee on RED. We're going to continue. Our hope is that as we continue to develop this report or develop the scope of work, and we have these decisions, that if we can stay within the scope of the OJJDP service provider and what they can offer, we may be able to continue with Dr. Prospero going past and allow him to implement the portion that would have been funded through a contract. If not, there is also the potential, if we have decided to go above and beyond and expand what we are going to analyze, we could actually take a look at partially funding through SACJJDP and then partially funding through a contract. Then there would be whether we would go RFP or sole source with the college university. Those things are all yet to be decided. We also have on our next steps the development of the next 3-year RED plan, as Chair Rios has stated. That is a portion of our state plan. We're hoping that the data that we are able to gather and this project itself will actually inform that state plan and give good decision points that could, or good data that could lead to some really good decision points. And then the third part, the project implementation, we're looking at the development of a project timeline for the contractor or phase 2 of this, the development then of what that report would look like in phase 2. And then we're also looking at recommending to the decision making at the scope of work meeting, training on how to interpret that report at a local level. Because as we know, formally in the way we collected data, when we do look at this data on where disparity exists within the juvenile justice system in California, it doesn't necessarily tell you why. So there does need to be a deeper dive into the data and take a look, well, what is causing this disparity at this level? And at that point, then, as we had discussed in previous meeting, interventions could be offered, and potentially, if this goes the way we hope, that potentially we could fund some of these interventions at the local level. So I'll stop there, Chair, and turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. And that's a lot of information, I know, but maybe you can have a chance to take a look at it. And as Tim talked about, some of the data just isn't giving us the real picture because you can't see the disparities that we know exist. It's not quite as easy to see that. We really want to work on this, and we need your input on that. So a couple of things. One, we will be convening that red group, and then from there adding to that. And I know that some of you have expressed interest, so I've got your names on that. Also, the Zoom meeting for August, wanting to check with you all to see if August 6th is a good date for a Zoom meeting so we could still do our strategic planning meeting and have conversation, especially on the direction we want to go. So that's one. And then two, we sent you a calendar of additional meetings for the year. Of course, we don't know where things will be. We're anticipating that after September that we might be having real meetings. So we'll keep it on the schedule as a real meeting, but recognizing that it may move into something different. Not having real meetings means we don't get to see each other, but the ability for us to not have to travel means that we might be able to meet more often. And we know that we've been talking about having to have more time to have these very important conversations. So it could be that we add additional meetings onto this if we need to, but for now, this is what it's looking like. So August 6th would be our Zoom meeting for our strategic planning session. September 17th would be the SACJJDP meeting in San Diego. I think we had previously identified that as a location. And then October would be the meeting in Sacramento. So I don't know if that's an action item that we need to approve this. I think we do need to approve this new schedule.
Correct.
Yes, we need an agreement, or if someone has some other alternate for because the actual proposal is holding the meeting on the 6th of August. All the September and October meetings are already scheduled per SACJJDP, so we would need either an agreement or a proposal for a different date, or a no.
I thought you said that was August. Oh yeah, 6th, right? Okay.
I'll make a motion if that's what you need.
Yes, ma'am. Thursday, August 6th.
Thank you, Michelle. Can I get a second on that motion?
Second.
Okay. Do you need to do a roll call?
Aaron, would you clarify? Let's do one just to be sure.
All right, let's go.
I'm sorry, and for clarification, we had who moved that motion?
Michelle Brown.
Okay. And it was a second by you, Ms. Biondi?
Yes, it was.
Thank you. We do have a few members that have to jump off early.
Okay.
I'll try to just breeze through it. Okay. Rachel Rios. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Just to clarify, the motion is that we have the meeting on August 6th through Zoom. Just want to make sure we identified that. And yes, I vote aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, Carol Biondi?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Judge Beck?
Aye.
Thank you. Dr. BJ Davis?
Aye.
Thank you. Dr. Dirk Heising stepped off for an emergency. Juan Gomez? I believe Juan had to leave as well. Michelle Guyman?
Aye.
Thank you. Susan Harbert had to leave early as well. Gordon Jackson?
Aye.
Thank you. Kent Mendoza? I believe he had to leave as well.
No, I'm here. Aye.
Sorry, thank you, Kent. Elliot?
Aye.
I'm still practicing Elliot, so. Amika Mota? Oh, she had to leave early as well. Winston Peters?
Aye.
Thank you. Dante Williams?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Amanda Clifford?
Aye.
Nancy O'Malley had to step off as well. Ramon Leja?
Aye.
Thank you. Chief Michelle Spray Brown? Chief Brown?
Yeah.
Sorry. What do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, that's okay. It's okay. Miguel Garcia? Okay. I'm going to absent. Even in spite of the people who had to leave early, we still have a quorum and we have all in favor.
All right. Thank you so much for all of you for being flexible on that. I know we've gone over half hour over our meeting. Even though there's Zoom meetings, we still have a lot of stuff to talk about. So we can adjust that. And, you know, when we do our I don't know how we'll do our strategic planning, but we'll work on that. Okay. So we talked about red, we talked about our calendar, and I'm sorry, we just saved, you know, BSCC updates till the end. Katie, we originally thought we might get you guys on early, but the conversation was just really important and we needed to have it. So thank you, and Linda, for hanging in there if you're both there. And did you want to give some BSCC updates to close this out?
I will do no more than 15 seconds. Thank you very, very much for the helpful conversations today. We're still waiting to see what the final outcomes are in the budget negotiations during this unprecedented time, to use the overused but accurate word. And I do understand that in what the legislature has put together, some of the grant funding that had been proposed for reversion in the May revise, the legislature is making a big push to leave in, and that includes the adult reentry grant, the youth reinvestment grant funding, the tribal youth diversion grant, and a portion of the CalVIP funding. So remains to be seen how that will all shake out. Otherwise, I just really, really appreciate the conversation today and happy to be a part of it.
Thank you, Katie. Tim, and do we have any last business things? Or Ricardo, I'm sorry, do we have any
no, I think in the interest of time, I think we're fine. Thank you so much.
I remember when you
I
said
think we're
Deanna,
good.
I remembered that I'm supposed to remind you all that you got a letter, a notification that you must turn in your Form 700s. So please get those into Deanna. Deanna, do you have any other updates or reminders for us?
Yes, Tim's touched on it at the beginning of the meeting. Just a reminder to please send in your updated bios to Tim. And I would request that all members do it, even the new members, just so that we know that we have the most updated and accurate information for you, because we like to post it on our web so that other people can review the SACJAB and see what you have to offer and all of the great things that you're doing in the community.
Okay. All right. This has been, you know, it's been tough. 2020 has been a pretty tough year, you know, with COVID and now with this. But as I think I kind of saw a quote from Michelle Obama that says, people want to feel hopeful. And I want to feel hopeful, and I know that our committee wants to feel hopeful that we can, together, we can do something better. We can make a better place. So I really appreciate the very heartfelt conversations that we had today. You know, whether we're meeting in person or Zooming, this is an amazing committee to be able to Zoom with. And I appreciate all your very important comments today, and as we move forward in this important work. So let's continue to reach out, and Tim will send some new information. We'll definitely keep you posted on the red work, and definitely I may reach out to a few of you to help me with the language on our first step, which is writing a statement. Okay, thank you all, and be well.
Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Madam Chair.
Oh,
please, prior
members
to
of the public.
Adjourn, we do need comment.
Sorry, thank you so much for always reminding me. It's so hard on this. If there are any members of the public who would like to make a comment, please let us know.
Hearing none.
Hearing none, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.